Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining me. Just before I begin, let me start off by giving you some context as to where we are at this stage of a project. Assuming we are around or past the develop design stage, and we are moving on towards the construction documentation phase, where we would need to provide production information at a technical design level. So today, I'll be showing you the new documentation features and improvements in V22 to help you in creating a tender or construction drawing pack faster and more intuitively. By now, you should already have some typical drawings such as GA plans at 1:200 scale, etc., and other supporting documents set up in your project browser. If you want to learn more about the new project browser and its features, please refer to the project browser breakout session. As I said earlier, we already have the bulk of drawing sheets set up. You will notice it's a typical GA plan with the typical information you would normally find on a 1:200 scale drawing. You can find walls, columns, furniture, and grids. If I do a quick select here, you'll find that I'm selecting some annotation tags even though I'm on paper space and not within the viewport. Grid bubbles or grid tags is a new feature, for example. Let's go deeper and let me explain how you would be able to specify the controls of the tags. If you go onto your support folder, you should find your tag type to style.xml file. This file contains the rule settings of the tags in your local machine. Open it with any text editor and you will find rows of values setting out how your tags would show or not. Notice that my BIM space has a value for name equals space tag style and auto placement equals to true. This goes for the same for my grid tags, as you can see in tag type equals BIM grid axis. You will also notice that I have multiple rows for tag styles for some BIM entities, such as walls and columns. In V22, you can also do so by associating multiple tags to a BIM entity, and we have shipped some additional tags we find might be useful for you, such as the ones ending with style max or style min. You can later cycle through the right tags you want on paper space. So let me demonstrate. I will change the auto placement equals false to auto placement equals true for this particular column style. This means that when I next refresh my viewport or BIM tags, my column entities would be tagged with this column type style min tag. Let's save and return to A101. Click on the ribbon Tag Automatically. Select the viewport in question and regenerate all. As you can see, there is now a tag assigned for each of the columns on this plan. If I click on it and go to its properties, you'll find the mleader style matching the column type style min. So this is how you manage your auto tag selection. But how do I make use of the cycle selection? So that's where the manual tag comes in. Hit tag manually from the ribbon and go for a column. The default one is a column type style. Before I click to confirm, I can hit the control button to cycle through my selection. Notice that the tags are changing in order of the rows that we saw earlier in the XML file. Let's go for this column type style max. Notice that the first value simply consisted of dashes. That's because there is no value in the property of the column, therefore giving us a null value. If I click on the properties panel, you can see this is column type max style. If we want this across the drawing, we need to make sure the column type style max is true in the XML file. But first, let's turn off the column type min style before we forget. Make sure to save it. Then tag auto again to confirm the latest changes. Let's investigate deeper into these tags. Now you know how to set the rules of these tags, but where do these tags actually come from? They are stored in the support folder in section text.dwg. If we open the file, you will find all the tag styles stored under multi-leader styles within the Drawing Explorer. If you're unsure of what parameters each of these tags are referring to, you can always click on the style, go onto Content tab, and onto the ellipsis, or the 3 dots to the right of default text. This opens the tag, and if you double click into the value field, it opens the field dialog. Navigate to Object 2D Leader under Extensions, and it will tell you which parameter the field is linked to read. So the first value is name, and the second value is composition. Now we know there isn't a name value for the columns, therefore the max tag wasn't complete. What if I would like to create a custom tag reading a custom value? Let's create one that reads the number value of any BIM entity, but in this case I'll be demonstrating it on wall entities. I can create a new one based on the existing wall type main, so I can save myself some time. Let's name this General Number Style. However, in the default text value, I'm going to make sure the field value is pointed to BIM and to number. Once done, just hit OK. I can even specify the text height to 1. There's another feature here which allows you to create more varied tags. You can change the frame type to something more unique, like a parallelogram. But let's simply stick to a circle. Once I'm happy, I'm just going to save and exit. For this demonstration, I'm going to put this in a new row under BIM_wall. Simply copy a row from above here and make sure the tag style name matches the one that we just created. I'm going to keep auto placement equals to false because I'm not going to tag all the walls. When done, just save. Before I regenerate the tags, let's take a look at what it will actually read in terms of the value. Most of the internal walls are in this interior model, so let's open it. We can see the number field value for the walls is actually fire rating, in this case, or in this model, which happens to reflect the same value in the fire rating parameter. To see this in action, simply return to our GA plan and hit Tag Manual. You can see that the tag we just created is reflecting the right value. This depends on what you've placed in the right field parameter, and if you're certain to tag every entity on this drawing, this particular tool can be very helpful. In V22, we've improved our annotations to read those field values I demonstrated too. If you would like a parametric annotation to reflect the right field value and add some notes at the end of the text, we have what we call informally impromptu tags, which exist as part of the mleader function. Any object that you point to can be any form of a BIM entity, so you are not restricted by the usual elements like walls, slabs, or columns. We can add fields which display names and number. For example, I am now pointing this to a chair. Again, go on to the field, Object 2D Leader, and make sure it's pointing to the right BIM entity, which in this case is a furnishing element. Now, go on to BIM and name, and you will find the values appear. I will also put a description field, which in this model contains any spec code or uniclass codes if applicable. I can add any additional supporting text and instructions alongside those fields for clarity. The fields are now parametric, so I can duplicate and point this to the desk, for example. The information will refresh and show the correct details. So in this case, this is helpful to specify and annotate FF&E elements if your scope includes the interior design bit. And in this case, you don't have to refer back and forth to make sure that your spec code is correct, for example. In V21, we introduced drawing customization as a new documentation feature. We've since added a few new features, integrated it into a project browser, and renamed it to type plans. I'm going to create a couple of strategy plans of level 1 to accompany the GA plan that we currently have. So I'm going to duplicate this viewport below and make it smaller at 1:500 scale. These are diagrammatic plans, so they can be small to represent graphics just to give an idea the design strategies that will lead to the technical designs in the drawing pack. In this case, we'll be doing a ventilation strategy plan to understand how spaces can be ventilated in the summer, and a space occupancy plan to understand how the different space typologies are distributed on this floor plate. Now, through the project browser, I can rename the viewport names and they will automatically reflect onto their respective callouts and sheets. Type plans, like drawing customizations, are simply drawing templates that you can run and reuse on viewports across different projects, provided you set the rules correctly. So this is really helpful if you can share it amongst your colleagues within your practice. So let's set up a ventilation strategy type plan. Click on the blue plus icon to add a new type plan. Notice a folder is created to store these templates, which end with a .tp extension. First, let's rename the type plan so we know what we're doing. Next, let's specify the entities to customize. We have two main features to highlight, one being openable curtain walls and naturally ventilated spaces. We will also include others, which I would like to dim down so my main graphics stand out in this diagram. Now, we can determine the color palette scheme. So let's go on to styles. I'm going to make this strategy with tones of blue. So I'm going to first specify a BricsCAD logo blue and a light blue. I'll add a light gray in. So for each of these styles, we'll have to set a index color, and in this case for blue, I'll set it to 150. I'll keep the line types, line weights, and line type scale by default because I won't be touching them. And I'll do the same for light blue. And gray. And now go back. We can now specify how each of these entities will appear in the template. Blue for the curtain wall panels, but we are just going to color the background, intersection fill, and intersection boundary, and nothing more because I just want the colors shown being cut. If you'd like to know more about what each of these functions do, you can visit our help guide to learn more. I'd also like a symbol to appear alongside these panels for our easy identification. So I'm going to choose the symbol I've previously prepared. Symbol source, ventilation symbol. To understand more about the ventilation symbol that we just imported in, you can always click on the edit button that brings you to the file and you can see what it contains. Notice there's a bounding box which represents the element it will replace or match itself with. My symbols are made out of a hatch and polylines, each of them assigned with a default symbol layer. Note those layer names. Now I'm going to return to my dialog box to make sure those are keyed in. Using an existing symbol.dwg doesn't mean you can't further modify how the symbol would look and how in tune it would be to your color palette. You can adjust them based on the symbol layer name that I just showed you earlier. BIM underscore 2D underscore back plus is blue, and BIM underscore 2D underscore set plus equals to blue. Click back to leave this edit mode, and we can carry on to do the rest. Gray for background, intersection fill, and intersection boundary. Space, natural ventilated, light blue for background, intersection fill, and intersection boundary. Okay, now these entities will show in the colors that I want, but how do I make sure BricsCAD knows which elements they are referring to? So this is where the rules come in. The first rule, we'll do it for the openable curtain wall panels. Click on New Filter. Type equals curtain wall. Notice we have a nested property search, so we can choose inside to outside direction as we are looking at the entity within a nested block, which is applicable in our case of XREFs. But still, that's going to select all of them. I need to pinpoint the right ones, so I'm going to first make a sub-rule. Let's take a moment and go to the architectural model where those panels are. You will notice that the solid ones, which are those that I'm looking for, have a name equals to NV. Another standing out parameter is the number with an air change value. And as for the normal glazing panels, you notice that the name field is empty. That's because it's not openable. Just to be sure, I'm going to subfilter them based on their names instead, rather than their air change value, because they might vary throughout the model. To end this rule, simply direct the correct entity customization we've prepared earlier. Let's do the same for the spaces. Type equals spaces, inside to outside, but for the sub-rule, we now support custom properties. Let me show you in the interior model where the spaces are. Notice that I have a custom property set called ventilation, and within it, I have a Boolean parameter called NV. Let's return to the Type Plans dialog. And I can simply type to find my custom property. This makes it easier now when you're working on a federated model in collaboration with other consultants, such as this. Last but not least, the rule for others. I'm going to say everything apart from spaces and curtain wall entities should turn grey because they are not important. Once completed, select ventilation strategy as the value for the drawing customization in the viewport properties. Let's update the section to see the results. You notice that the graphics and the colors are now displayed as per how we set. Let's zoom in to see more. You now see the symbol that we imported earlier showing alongside the blue shaded panel that shows that this panel is openable. So in a glance now, you can see where the naturally ventilated spaces are. So for the next viewport to the right, I'm going to run a separate type plans to show how easy it is to complement the GA plan and ventilation strategy drawing. If you have drawing customization templates created in V21 previously, or type plan templates shared amongst colleagues from other projects, you can always use the UI to import those .tp folders and bring them into the current project. All the settings, rules, styles will be brought in, so there's no need for you to recreate them. Let's import the space occupancy type plan that I have previously created. I can immediately run it on this new viewport to see the changes. Importing your previous type plans does not mean you can't change the rules or settings. Let's import the fire strategy type plan, which was first created for the drawing customization breakout session last year. However, I'm going to modify the template to demonstrate the new feature within type plans, which is the tag customization. I'm not going to touch any of these entity customizations, and as you can see, you don't have to redo such a detailed template from scratch. Now onto tag customization. What tag customization does, as the name suggests, is that you have control over the tags that come within the type plans, independent of the XML file that I showed you earlier. This way, you might want to have some dedicated tags for exclusive purposes, but you have to make sure they are stored in the section tags.dwg as I showed you earlier. As this is going to be a fire strategy drawing, I would like to quickly tag some walls and spaces. Wall fire rating numbers in this case, and just normal space tags. For spaces, I'll keep it as the default space type style. And for the wall, remember the general number tag that we did earlier? We can make use of it to save time. Why not? Since we read the number property that we want anyway. So for wall, general number style. For this, both my auto placement and auto rotation is true because I like them aligned against the walls. So like drawing customizations, we also need to set the rules. The first space rule will be the same as how we did in the drawing customization. As for the wall, I'll put a sub-rule to say that only the walls with a fire rating value would show. So for the sub-rule, I will further narrow down to the walls that contains the word within the right field so that not all the walls, including non-fire rated ones, will be tagged. Okay, that's it. Go to Drawing Customization, run this new file strategy type plan, and here you go, tags with colored entities as per the file rating. In this case, people can know immediately through this simple diagram what these colors mean in terms of the file rating. So no construction documentation pack is left without looking into details or into a smaller scale drawing. V22 now supports default annotation graphics to help drawing production through the section indicator lines on paper space. Again, they exist as an mleader style in section tag.dwg, linked to the right entity via the XML file, just like how I demonstrated the number tag earlier. If we add a new detail section volume for part plans and typical junction details, these callouts will now appear intuitively when you update your section views. I'll now make a couple of smaller details at the junctions between the curtain wall and core cladding. You can always click display to understand how the volume detail is cut within the building, so you know which details need to be focused on and which junctions need to be improved. So over here you can see how complicated the joints are between the walls, the cladding, and also the curtain walls. As for here, I'd like the volume section to understand how the curtain wall sits on the ground floor and how it meets the external floor level. It's always a good habit to quickly rename the volume section detail that you just created. So for this, I'm just going to say curtain wall meets the ground floor junction. And I'll just quickly go to my structure browser to rename our previous volume detail. I'm going to rename it as curtain wall meets core cladding. I can also do a volume section based on an existing section, so this is easy, especially if I want to do a 1:50 part plan of the ground floor. We can later add this into using sheet set setup onto new sheets. Notice that my part plan will be going on to a A100 series, as it's a plan, whilst the detail goes to a A602 series by default. Just before we forget, let me quickly specify the details that we just made to 1:10, because I like to have them zoomed in. Once I'm ready, I can place them all in the sheets using a sheet set setup. The sheets will be automatically renamed based on the configuration that I set over here. Therefore, the plan starts from an A100 series and the detail starts with an A600 series. Once OK, create sheets. OK, let's open A108 and analyze the part plan. Notice that the section shows the detail as I mentioned with a section indicator tagged to it. This is helpful especially when you have many details of different junctions going around and to keep track where they are. And if I return to my tag type to style.xml file, you will notice that the BIM section indicator section has got the auto placement true and auto rotation true. Therefore, you notice that the volume section callouts are orientated to the right position. In V22, we have a new feature called BIM Dimensions, which is our version of an intelligent dimensioning tool. This is going to be a drawing that I'll be focusing on setting out some drywalls for the subcontractor. The first thing I'm going to do is to dimension the distance between grids. What you can do over here is you can specify a rule to filter simply the grids, so you're certain that you're just selecting them and not anything else. As my grids are at an angle, I can always select direction, go onto my command line to click angle, and zoom in to the grid where I need to dimension them. In this case, I need to make sure that I snap the endpoints, and on the other side, an intersection, so that I could give BIM dimension the right angle that it needs to go. When I simply hover around the grid entities that I've just selected, it will display me a full dimension in this case. If I hit the control button, and as you notice on the hotkey widget below, it will now dimension grid line to grid line. So this is helpful if you like to dimension multiple grid lines on a simple alignment. Next, I'd like to dimension between grid lines and walls for setting out drawings. So in this case, I'm selecting multiple BIM entities, and for my filter rule, what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify type BIM is not space, because I've not turned off space in the model when I regenerated this sheet. Therefore, I have the ability to select the space accidentally. Similarly, hover around your selection to give you the full dimension first. Next, hit the control button and you realize that it's now splitting between elements. As you can see, this is done in just a single click, rather than doing it individually using the Align Dimension tool. Another feature of the BIM Dimensions tool is the ability to do setting out drawings based on the structure ply profile. So what do I mean by that? First, let us select just the BIM walls in this case. and make sure that the option to dimension structural plies is turned on. Place dimensions and when you arrive to the inner walls, for example here, you realize that the dimensions are now different. Instead of 171 mm thickness of the wall as you saw earlier, it's now 146. Why is that so? If you look closely, it's dimensioning inside the wall, within the structural ply, discounting the finished ply. Another interesting feature of this BIM DIM is the ability to dimension based on the structural opening. So on the right hand side, for example, where the doors are, if I hit the control button, you realize that the structural opening of the doors are automatically dimensioned. Last but not least, BIM dimension allows you to merge dimensions, meaning it can override the previous dimension that you've set. So in this case, if I like to have the structural openings, I can merge into the full dimension that I just did earlier without having to delete the previous one. So just to show you how the structural ply feature works, we can go to the interior model, find out the composition of the wall, go on to your composition tabs to see how the drywall is made up of. And you notice that the structure function is 146 in the middle, sandwiched between two finished layers of plasterboards. Whilst we are still populating this drawing pack with more production information, there are things that you think could be automated to save time. Remember the no values in the column type max style that we got earlier? Let's replace them automatically. In V21, we introduced BIM Python where you could load your Python scripts. Now in V22, you can import and run your scripts straight from the project browser. Simply go onto my project browser and access the structure model. You can import a script which could be prepared by your BIM manager or your in-house computational design specialist. For me, in this case, it's this set name and number.py. You can also open the scripts to check that the syntax makes sense before you actually run it. In short, what this script will do is that it will auto-name all the BIM entities within this model. But I won't be showing you the technicalities of creating a Python script, so if you're interested to learn more, please look out for the BIM Python breakout session. Notice that the columns do not have a name value. And once you run the script, you can find that the nameless columns that we just clicked on are now renamed. And same goes for other entities within the model, such as a slab. Let's save the drawing. Go back to our master model and make sure that the link is properly reloaded in this federated model. Because our sheets are derived out of the master model. Like before, just click on Tag automatically and just update existing tags. Now you see the tags are reflecting the right name values. One thing to make sure is that you have to run the .py script in the right .dwg model. So I'm going to run this on the master model where my BIM model is actually stored in model space. Now right-click this space occupancy.py file which I've already prepared. Again, in short, what this script does is that it will generate a pie chart and an area schedule based on the spaces I have in this model. It will automatically create folders to store this information, so when I refresh a project browser, I will see them here. Let's go to A101, where the GA plan in question is placed. Simply right-click the image and attach it on A101. And here you have it, a pie chart with corresponding colors next to space occupancy strategy drawing. Now you know which spaces are the most dominant in this level 1 floor plate. To further accompany the pie chart and the plans, what we can do is that we can create a table that links the area schedule generated by the script earlier. I'll make sure it aligns nicely to the pie chart. So now we have a quantitative and a qualitative understanding of how this floor plate works. So here we are. This is the construction documentation breakout session. I hope you've enjoyed it and thank you for watching.